if you're a regular viewer of House of Cars, first of all, thank you by the way, then you'll know that I love a hot hatchback. Lots of us do. And the reason that we all love hot hatchbacks is simple. They're just regular, normal family hatchbacks, sensible cars, but with an added dose of sportiness and performance. Now, we've tested quite a few of them on the channel recently. We had the new Cupra Leon VZ, there was the Honda Civic Type R, and of course BMW's new M135. And this is Audi's entrant into the market, the S3. Thing about it is though, is it just a little bit too sensible for its own good? Time to find out. As I say, welcome to this week's road test review, welcome to the Audi S3. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the House of Cars. Now, before I get started on this week's review of Audi's S3, it is of course the time where I would just ask a small favour of you. We have got some subscribers, but I would like an awful lot more. So if you're not already a subscriber, would you consider please becoming one? Once you've done that, press the little bell button, it's down below, because that means you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you watch the review and you enjoy it, and I sincerely hope you do, give it a little thumbs up, and of course, as always, don't forget, put your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars that we feature on the channel, such as the Audi S3, and of course on the House of Cars channel as a whole. So the Audi S3, it was sort of, I think, the originator of the Uber hatch in some respects. You know, there were still hot hatchbacks before. You know, they had obviously Golf GTIs, there was Escort XR3Is, you know, all the rest of it and stuff like that. But in 1999, Audi gave us their first 4-cylinder S car, the S3. And it looked like a normal, regular Audi A3 that had been to the gym. You know, slightly bulging wheel arches, still neat and crisp in its design, and it's still usable because it's an Audi A3. But it just had a little bit of dose of attitude about it, didn't it? 225 horsepower from a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine and quattro 4-wheel drive. As I say, I think that was the sort of the genesis of the, you know, the Uber hatch in some respects. And the formula hasn't really changed since then. It's still a regular Audi A3 with a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine driving all 4 wheels. But in some respects, I think the look of it has been toned down a little bit. Or is it a case of maybe the regular A3 has been spruced up a little bit? Which way does it go? Either way, there's an element of me that thinks the S3's just got a little bit too grown up, a little bit too sensible for its own boots. Especially in the light of those cars that we mentioned at the start there, the Cupra, the Honda, and of course BMW. Well, now they've got the M135. So I decided to get one in, put it through its paces, and find out what it's like. But as always, let's take a brief look at the main points on the car before we start the full review. So this is a revised version of the 4th generation of Audi's S3, available in either 5-door Sportback guise like we have here, or a 4-door saloon. True to the S3 tradition, the car runs a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. This one 2 litres in capacity, delivering power to all 4 wheels through a 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox. The car now produces 333 PS and 420 Newton meters of torque. 2 trim levels are available, and it's priced from £47,500 depending on model and options fitted. So in some respects, familiar S3. But as I say, has it just got a bit too sensible? In other words, is it like trying to run a marathon in a pair of brogues? Because let's be honest, a hot hatch should be fun. They should be like, just like funky training shoes, shouldn't they? They should be a bit wild and a little bit exuberant. So really, does the S3 still have what it takes to cut it in the hot hatch market? Well, let's put it through another House of Cars road test review and find out. So let's start with the way that the car looks. Now, as much as I've just said all what I've said, I've always liked the A3. I think it's a good looking car. In fact, I think it's one of Audi's best looking cars. Always has been, all the way through the generations. And in fairness, from the 2nd generation car onwards, it always has been quite a subtle looking car. That first one, the slightly flared arches and more kind of squat and purposeful stance, you know, was probably the most flamboyant of all the S3s. But of course, nowadays, if you want the flamboyance in an A3 shape, you buy an RS3. The S3 flies a little bit more under the radar in some respects, a little bit more like a kind of Q car, if you like. And I think in terms of these hot hatchbacks, where you've got BMW the 1 Series, it's never really been a good looking car. And in respect, if you have one, I've always felt the Mercedes-Benz A35, A45, that's just trying a bit too hard. I think Audi get it right. It's not so much a wolf in sheep's clothing, more of a wolf in a Hugo Boss suit. And I think that works really, really well. But of course, my question still stands. If it wasn't for the fact that it had a big set of wheels and this rather nice shade of progressive red paintwork, if it was more of a dark colour, a black or a dark grey, would you know that it was an S3? Maybe you might want that. Now, at the front, they've changed a little bit, so it's a facelifted car from the 4th generation. You've got some new lights at the front, your matrix LEDs. Obviously, you get this blacked out sort of like grille area here. There's 2 versions of the car, the black edition and the Vorsprung edition. This is a Vorsprung edition, so the top of the range one. You've got your 2-dimensional Audi badge just there, and it all just blends in quite nicely. There's some extra cooling down there where you've got sort of like air intakes into the lower radiators down there, and there's some more sort of like vents at the front there. But as I say, it sort of flies under the radar a little bit. It's not trying too hard. And I quite like that about it. But is it just a bit too subtle? Now, as I said, you can get 2 body styles in the S3. Now, either this 5-door Sportback, as Audi call it, or you got a 4-door saloon. I quite like the saloon, I have to admit, quite a sporty looking car. And that obviously competes with cars such as the Mercedes-Benz CLA and of course the BMW 2 Series Grand Coupe, a car that we also tested on the channel just recently. 19-inch alloy wheels, standard on the car. As I say, it'll also depend on which one you go for, the black edition or the Vorsprung, what style you get. These are, I think they call these the S-Design multi-spokes. These are on the Vorsprung. Again, quite nice. And again, nice and subtle, isn't it? When you look at the side of the car, what tempts you into thinking it's an S3? Carbon door mirrors, well, that's on the Vorsprung edition. The big 19-inch wheels, but to be honest with you, a lot of hatchbacks are on 19-inch wheels. There's no real flaring of the arches, that you used to get on the S3. No extraneous sort of like spoilers or things like that, or slashes or vents or things like that down the side of the car. So it is a very subtle style of car. Obviously, as I say, if you want a bit more flamboyance, Audi do the RS3, which gives it a bit more of a kind of butch look about it. But I quite like this. This is a nice, good-looking car, very clean of line. The shut lines as well, and the build quality. It's what you expect from, well, I say it's what you expect from Audi. The last few Audis I've tested, I have to admit, I've been disappointed with the build quality. And there's some elements of the interior could be better, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, nice, clean shut lines, 5-door Sportback, not a big extended roof spoiler at the back, and 19-inch alloy wheels. Neat, subtle, typical Audi. It's only when you get round the back that there's a hint of the potency available from the car, because you get the quad exhaust pipes on the S3. And this particular car is fitted with the optional performance exhaust system from Akrapovic. We'll talk about the price of it later on. Yeah. And then, of course, you get this blacked area here with sort of like the Audi S design sort of embossed into it. Again, very subtle badging, just your S3 with a sort of like S square there, and then your 4 rings of Ingolstadt there. There's a little reverse camera tucked underneath there, but as I say, very subtle roof spoiler, high-level brake light, and that's your lot. Oh, there's some new rear LED lights as well, with some different graphics in them for this facelifted car. So look, as I say, what side of the coin do you sit on? Would you want something a little bit more aggressive or overtly sporting? Or are you a little bit like me that actually quite likes the subtleness of this car? Have you got an S3? Which version do you have? Do you remember the original one from '99? The 225 brake horsepower? Would this tempt you into a newer one? Or have you already gone down the route of a BMW M135 or a Mercedes A35 AMG? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. So of course, hot hatchbacks, why do we love them? Well, because they're fast and they're practical. Is the S3 practical? Yes, 325 litres worth of practicality, I'd say, which is more than you get from the BMW M135. You've got a 40-20-40 split rear seat, which if you fold down will take total capacity up to 1,145 litres. There's no real sort of like drop into the boot either. It's a relatively shallow drop from the actual rear sort of like scuff plate here, and again, that's nice, and it's plastic, so you're scraping stuff across, it's not going to matter too much. There's no underfloor storage. Oh, sorry, there's got a luggage net attached to this one here. I would put that away. There's no underfloor storage as such. There's no spare wheel either. That's the downside. But then with 19-inch wheels, where are you going to put a 19-inch wheel when you take it off? Exactly. So suitcases, do they fit? Well, not all four, but we can get a combination of them in. So if we take our biggest one, that can actually just sit on its side at the back there, and then we can get two carry-ons in, one that way and then one down the side there. And actually there's an extra bit of room there. If you were to put a soft bag in there or a rucksack or some jacket stuff in, you'd get that in there. So in terms of practicality and the size of car that it is, yeah, absolutely fine for what you would need, I would suggest. What about in the back? Well, as I say, you can only buy two body styles in the S3 now, so either the 5-door Sportback or a 4-door saloon car. So, you know, you don't have to get 3 doors where people are clambering in. And actually, once you're in here, it's not bad. That's fine. I'm 5'8". That driving seat is set up for me, admittedly. So if you're a 6-foot driver, you'd maybe be a bit more, you know, your legs would be a bit more kind of pushed back. But if you're sitting behind somebody like me, and I've got the seat all the way down as well, that's got more than enough space underneath it for my feet. I've got knee room because there's some sculpting out of the back of the front seats as well. And there is headroom, despite this car having the optional sunroof fitted as well. So that is actually not bad at all. Don't get me wrong, it's not huge. It's not as big as obviously a big SUV or whatever, but it's a hatchback we're talking about here, okay? There's obviously a centre transmission tunnel, okay? So in some respects, maybe a little bit like the Civic Type R, it's really only designed for 2 people. Because obviously, you know, you get this middle person would have to straddle that transmission tunnel with their feet. However, down here we've got face vents as well, which is good for people in the back, or if you take your dog with you, like I sometimes do, you know, although he'd be in the front of me, obviously, because he's that important. And then you've got a controller there for hot or cold airflow throughput. You've also got 2 USB-C charging ports there as well. Now, storage-wise, yes, you have an armrest with 2 cup holders in, and there is door bins as well, which aren't lined and they're not particularly big, but they'd probably take an additional water bottle or a packet of Monster Munch and some Revels, so plenty for that. It does feel a little bit claustrophobic because of the darkness of the interior. That's the only downside. So, and I say it with Audi, it's quite a Germanic thing, you know, sort of dark headlinings, dark interiors, you know, and dark door cards and stuff like that. You know, it just makes it feel a little bit more enclosed in the back. But certainly in terms of the actual space, there's not much more you could ask for, I would suggest. Right, interior. Apologies, I've put the engine running for 2 reasons. First of all, so you can see everything, and second of all, it's really warm today. The weather's been great in the UK this week, so yeah, I've got the aircon on. So yeah, so there we go. But as I say, I want you to see the dashboard. Now, reviewed quite a lot of Audis over the last couple of months, and it's the interior that I find really hit and miss with them, the ones I've had in, whether it's been in House of Cars or whether it's been over on Auto EV. Some have been really good, some haven't been, you know, up to scratch as far as I'm concerned. This is probably the former camp. This is a good interior. I like the interior of this car. So it's not perfect, and there are areas I'm going to criticise Audi for, in fairness, but overall I think this is a really good interior. So first of all, let's start with the design of it. So you see they've raised the vents are obviously up here now. These are quite nice. I quite like these up where they are, and then the passenger vents are just in front of them, just over there. You've also got the 2 screens. You've got this infotainment screen here, and then you've got the virtual cockpit, which is in there. Now, in fairness, let me just, what I've noticed of late with Audi, okay, they've got their new panoramic MMI cockpit, which is the one I'm criticising in some respects, which has this, you know, screens. And as I said, for years I kept saying, Audi, come on, you've got to change the design of your interiors. They have changed it on the panoramic MMI, and I'm not sure whether I like it or not. In some respects, when you get back into one of the sort of the interiors that maybe follow the old way, you start to appreciate how good this was. Okay, so you've got a view in front of you in the driver's display, which you can change quite a lot. So you can have it so that you can have really small dials right pushed out to the side and then scroll through it. So you get things like trip computer, the navigation, you have the map up there, you know, your Bluetooth, you can have your media playing, so obviously you get the radio on, you have it in there, and then trip computer, okay? So that, or you can have really big dials, you know, and then change what the center section is. So in some respects, there's a lot more configuration available in the older style virtual cockpit than there is in the new MMI panoramic cockpit. okay? And it's typical Audi in terms of, you know, white lettering on black screen, so it's really very easy to read and very easy to see. So then you move across here, and of course you've got your infotainment screen, which you can see. And then again, the thing that I always loved about this screen is, okay, yes, a lot of things are controlled through it. So going into your settings and so forth and such, like, you know, your navigation, your connected services, your entertainment system and that type of thing. But when you press something, you still get that click that says you've pressed it. See? You hear that? It's really good. I like that. I've always liked that about the Audi. And then below that, you've got your separate climate control systems, which are still operating physical buttons. Okay, so you've got your automatic sync. You can see there your separate display for your temperature, your aircon setting, and then your heated seats either side there, and then a physical control to change where you want the fan, or up your fan speed, or lower it, or change your temperature on passenger side or driver's side. Okay. Really good. And as I say, it's odd. As much as I'll take this one on the chin, as much as I've criticised Audi, like saying, oh, Audi, you need to change the design of your interiors, they did. I'm not sure whether I liked it. And actually now I've jumped in this car and been using it, I've gone, actually, yeah, this really did work quite well. So in fairness, really good interior of the car. You've got another bank of physical buttons down underneath this one here. So you've got your drive select mode for your driving modes, which we'll talk about when we're out driving the car. Your DSC, your stop start system on and off, parking cameras, obviously there, sort of reversing camera. You got your park assist, and then this one here, which is your drive assist. Now I do like this. This is something new. So of course things such as lane keep assist, speed limit warning, I really don't like that. I find them very intrusive and I tend to just turn them off. With a lot of modern cars, they're buried in menus of the screen. With the Audi, so let me just show you here. So if you're on your screen like that, oh, okay, let's say actually we're on navigation, we're going somewhere and you think, oh, I forgot to turn off lane speed assist. You press that button there, and then you just turn off your traffic speed limit warning there, and lane departure. Okay, that's it, job done. Okay, that's all you need to do. So it's a really easy system to get on with. The other thing I really like about it as well that Audi do is, I've always liked this, they've got this little volume control. See this little circular thing here? And it's a bit like using one of the original click wheel iPods. You know, so if you're turning your volume up, you just scroll round or turn it down the other way. And then you've got press it for back track search, press it forward for track search, turn it off at the top, and then mute it at the bottom. It's a really simple little control, and I really like that. I think I've always liked that. Your engine stop start button there, you've got wireless charging pad down there. The big criticism I'm going to give Audi, the biggest piece of criticism I'm going to have about the interior is the amount of this piano black, this glossy black plastic. There's too much of it. It's there, it's up on the dash, it's just too much. And of course it starts to look really scratched. In fact, this one's getting scratched already. Like, it's covered in fingerprints and dust and it just looks a bit off. That needs to be changed, I think. If they'd done maybe, like, say, an aluminium style of finish there, or dare I suggest even just wood, I don't mind that. Anyway, that's that. So that's my first criticism. My second criticism is the quality has taken a bit of a dip with Audi, and I'm sorry to say that, but this bit here, this bit of plastic up here, that's not good. It doesn't feel nice. It feels cheap. It's really sharp on the underneath, and then you can just hear how hollow feeling it feels. That's not what I expect from an Audi interior, especially when you see the rest of it. You know, you get your squidgy rubber at the top there, you know, that's all nice and soft touch, you know, and then you get really nice sort of like leather on the seats as well. And then, you know, you've still got plastic on the door cards, but it's very well screwed together. But then the door handles are made of the same stuff as this. And again, because that's a touch point, that's something, you know, you pull the door closed, it just doesn't feel that nice. That could do with being changed. What I will, however, counter that with is this. Look at this. A round steering wheel. This is one of the nicest wheels to drive, especially with a performance car. BMW, I just feel, are too thick. And then the Audi have resisted temptation to square it off even. Look, circular wheel. It's just the right thickness. It's covered in leather. You've got the perforated bits at the 1/4 to 9 as well, which feel good. The gear shift paddles, it's the typical Audi gear shift paddles. They do feel a bit plastic, and I think they could be better, but they do work and they're fine in that sense. But if you do use them, they just feel a bit cheap. They could be doing change. But the wheel itself, lovely. Simple 3-spoke design, just the right amount of buttons on them, and physical buttons. Thank you, Audi, you've kept physical buttons on it. So you get the scroll wheel for the volume and for scrolling up and down your menus on that side, and track search up there and changing your view there. Fabulous, absolutely bloody brilliant. Seats, superb, absolutely superb seats. Really good seats in this car. And these are the standard seats as well. Now, as I say, this is a Vorsprung edition, so this gets the standard something called the Technology Pack Pro, which gets things such as the panoramic sunroof. I've forgotten what it is now. It's a panoramic sunroof. There's some extra safety kit. Anyway, you can have it as an option on the black edition car, but this Vorsprung gets it as standard. And obviously there's a price difference between the two models. So, what was I saying there? Right, yeah, good interior. On the whole, probably the easiest Audi interior to get on with in terms of the new one that's in the A5 that I tested the other week with that panoramic view thing. You got to get used to all of those screens and stuff. This shows you how good Audi did do it originally, and as I say, a hands up, I was critical of them for not changing it, but I quite like the design of it. I like the usability of it. I like the fact you've just got easy to reach buttons that are easy just to turn things on and off. I like the volume control there. You know, the steering wheel feels good. The driving position's perfect. I just don't like all this piano black glossy stuff there, and as I say, there are just areas of it you just feel there's a bit of a downward dip in terms of the quality of the materials that Audi are now using, which is a shame. But otherwise, yeah, I like this interior. Recognise this? Well, you should do, because it's the familiar EA888 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that's used across a lot of products in the Volkswagen Group. And in the S3, this has been tweaked now to give 333 PS and 420 Newton meters of torque. But they've made some big differences to the rest of the mechanical setup. Now, it feeds its power through a 7-speed dual-clutch S-tronic transmission to all 4 wheels. But the big difference with this car now is it has the RS3's torque splitter on the rear axle, and what that does is it uses a multi-disc clutch setup on either rear drive shafts to shuffle the power to alter the grip, you know, through loss of traction. So in other words, it allows the car to dig in a little bit more. It'll move the power across to make sure that the wheel that needs it gets it. The other thing they've also done is they've added in another mode into the stability control system, a dynamic plus setting, which will just slacken the reins of the DSC system just to allow a little bit more movement in it, just a little bit more fun with the car. And that's the thing, you know, Audis have always been fast, or fast Audis have always been fast. There's never been a problem with their actual delivering performance in a straight line, but sometimes in the bends they've lacked the fun factor, and that's what Audi want to change with this. Gear shifts are reduced by 50%, so in other words, the way this thing changes gear, it changes quicker than you can blink, and that is absolutely fantastic. So the level of sort of like delivering that power, there's no loss as you accelerate, you know, through the gears itself. And now, if you're interested in fuel economy, then you're looking at a combined figure around about 33 miles to the gallon, and if emissions are your bag, well, it's 194 grams per kilometre of CO2 that this thing puts out. But all that sounds a little bit sensible, doesn't it? And what this car is about is fun. So shall we go out and take it out for a spin and have some fun? Go on then, let's do that. Right, the new S3. Power, 333 PS. Torque, 420 Newton meters. 0 to 60, 4.7 seconds. That's not far off the sprint time that the last generation RS3 did 60 in. This is a quick car. You know, this is a really quick car. Remember, it's just an Audi A3 hatchback, let's be honest about it. That's what I quite like about it. Right, Audi have concentrated a lot on this car to make it more fun to drive as well. So as I say, you've got that rear torque splitter from the RS3, which shuffles the power around. So using sort of like multi-disc clutches on each drive shaft. Now what you have there is a simple set, you know, if you have a loss of power through, dare I suggest, a loss of traction, because as obviously as a wheel skips maybe or sort of like leaves the ground, you know, the power's not getting onto the ground. So of course what this will do is it will shuffle the power across to the other wheel that is in contact with the ground to make sure you don't have that loss of power. Does that make sense? Right, okay. And on the whole, that all works. It works really, really well. It also allows the back end just to be a little bit more playful as well, which is something playful wasn't really a word in the old S3's sort of like repertoire. Fast, yes. Fun, this one is. This one's really different, I think. So the other thing that Audi have done as well is they've also altered the camber on the front wheels as well. So again, the steering just has a little bit more bite. There's just a bit more grip as you go into the corner. There's less inclination for the car to understeer than there was before, which was a typical sort of fast Audi trait. You know, BMWs were always sort of like renowned for their, you know, lift-off oversteer, or their, you know, sort of like a lot of power going to the back wheels. Audis just felt a bit safe, but felt maybe a little bit wooden as well. There was no real fun to be had with them. And that's what Audi have concentrated on changing with this car, and it really has worked. You also now have a new setting in the drive mode selection where you've got Dynamic Plus that allows the traction control system, the DSC, just to have a little bit more free rein, if you like. It just loosens the reins a little bit and just says, go on and have a little bit of fun, like nudge that back end out through a tighter bend. And you can feel it. I mean, I can't at the moment because I'm following a line of traffic, but you know what I mean. On a twisty, turny road that you've been driving down this week, you know, you just feel the back end just that little bit. It doesn't sort of like, it doesn't feel like you're dragging it back round, you know, sort of like dragging it round the bend. It feels like it's actually almost pushing you round. It's almost rear sort of like bias that you can feel with it. But then there's the flip side of the S3, which is this, where we're in the normal mode and we're just driving it like we would drive an Audi A3. And that's the best bit about it. That's why this car, I think, really wins. It's a real double-edged sword. Whereas the M135 BMW just felt, I don't know, it felt almost too polished, if that makes sense. It felt like it just did everything so well. It was like the class SWAT, you know, because they were so good at everything, they just lacked a little bit of fun. They just felt like they weren't the kind of boy that was going to go and put a whoopee cushion on the teacher's chair. This sort of does, you know, and it wouldn't take a lot to convince them to do it. That's the difference with this car. It just feels like there's a bit more playfulness in it. There's a little bit more, oh, all right, then that does sound a bit fun. Yeah, let's do that. So if I go into, where is it, Drive Select down here, and then I get efficiency, comfort, auto, dynamic and individual. If I go into the dynamic mode, it's now holding on, can you hear that? It's holding on to the gear a bit longer. The exhaust has become a bit more vocal as well. Now this Akrapovic exhaust that's on this, I think Audi call it just sports performance exhaust or something, 4,100 and something pounds. Is it worth it? I'm genuinely not sure it is. And a lot of the noise that comes in here is augmented anyway. So if we it's there, but I wouldn't say it's making night and day of a difference for me. You do get the odd little popple and crack on the downshift as well, but I don't know if it's £4 of my money, personally speaking. Anyway, the point being, with this dynamic mode, because this is the Vorsprung, this also gets the adaptive dampers as well on the suspension. Now, what I will say about this is, I think this is a teensy little bit too hard, teensy little bit too firm on the suspension. You know, I always sort of like say it was a bit fun, but it's not what I'd call uncomfortable. This is bordering on being like that in many ways, which is why it's quite nice to have that individual mode, because what you can then do is you can set the car up how you like it. So you like the dynamic throttle response, you like the dynamic steering, the dynamic exhaust note, but you want the comfort suspension, which I do. You can dial all that in and put it into that individual mode, and that gives you the best of both worlds, I think, because actually with the firm suspension, as you go into a bend, especially if you know the roads in the UK where you've got those surface imperfections, or you've got those ridges, where you've got those maybe potholes, as it hits it, what will happen is because the dampers are so firm now, the wheel movement isn't there, so that's when it starts to do that sort of almost skip motion. What you want is you want more travel in the spring and damper so that it stays in contact with the road more, so you don't get that loss of power. So by putting it into the individual mode, by putting it into the softer suspension and programming that to the individual mode, that's what you get. You get a bit more playfulness, but you've still got. See there, you see that back wheel just skipped. it hit that ridge and you could just feel it just move the car. If that had been in individual mode and with a softer suspension setting that I've programmed in, it wouldn't have done that. I'd have had a bit more travel and the wheel would have stayed in contact with the road more. And that's the difference. But you can do that with this car. You can do it. And that's what I like about it. You can set the car up how you want it to be. Sorry, I'm just going through my usual width restriction. There we go. Did that the other day and I knocked one of my cameras. Didn't knock it off, but I could hear it hit. So that's what's good about the S3 now, okay? Save the money. Don't have the exhaust personally. Don't do that. I think that's a bit of a waste of money personally. But I think with the I would probably say the Vorsprung is probably the one. Actually, I'm going to pop it into my individual program now. Yeah, you see that's much, much better. So this road here, which is quite bumpy, you've got much more compliance in the suspension, but all the other stuff is set up into its sportier setting. This is a good car. But as I say, it's still just an Audi A3. So you've got a nice interior. Well, you know, apart from a couple of bits on it, you've got a relatively nice interior. You know, you've got a good driving position. You've got, you know, I can't get over the steering wheel. That it's not silly and flat bottomed and weird in shape. It's just a round wheel. And it's just a really nice thickness to it as well. It's really nice. But you can drive this down to the supermarket. You know, let your granny drive it down to, you know, pick up her pension in it. It's fine. It'd be nice if the paddles were a bit more tactile, because I actually do quite like using it on the paddles with this car, I have to admit. It'd be nice if they were, I don't know, metal or maybe just, I don't know, or have a little bit of rubber backing. You know they had on the M135, as I said, they had that slightly rubber fingertip bit. Oh, sorry. That gear shift is phenomenal. They've quickened the shifts up 50%. That is just, that's so slick. It's bang, 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 bang. And then when you downshift, it's immediate and there's no loss of power. There is absolutely no power loss as you go from ratio to ratio or coming down the box. This is a really good car. Really good car. It's interesting, I really think, you know, because when the S3 first came out in 1999, you know, it was quite a standout car. It was Audi's first 4-cylinder S car, and it was the first time Audi had done, you know, that car. And in some respects, as I say, it was almost the first of those real sort of like premium hot hatches, you know, that really elevated it above the usual Golf GTI 16 valve, you know, sort of like, you know, the Focus ST 170, those kind of cars. And it made people realise, oh yeah, you could put a lot of power through those cars, can't you? And I think, you know, sort of like in some respects, when they then upped the game with the RS3, the S3 felt, I'm not going to say apologetic, that's not what I mean, but you know what I'm saying, it just wasn't quite the car that it used to be in some respects. It just felt like it lived in its shadow, the RS3 shadow a bit. Oh, now it's back. It's back now. I think if you were absolutely looking for the pin-sharp driver's hot hatch, then you'd want the Civic Type R. But I think if you wanted a car that really defines what a hot hatchback is very good at, in other words, 1 minute it's just a 5-door family hatchback, and then the next, when you've dropped the family off home, or you want to get up at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning and just go out for yourself, turn the radio off, switch the phone off, and just really, really attack a proper B road and have fun with it. I think this one really does take some beating. I really do. I think this is one of the best cars that Audi make. I really do, it's that good. I think this is a proper, fast Audi. It's brilliant. Right, price. Now, as I said, I've been reviewing quite a few Audis of late, whether it's been on House of Cars or over on Auto EV. And the one thing that you just can't get away from the fact is Audis are not exactly what you would call inexpensive these days. and this is no different. However, in fairness, you know, there's a reason for this particular car being expensive. Right, so you're to say there's two models available, okay? You start with the black edition, which is £47,550, okay? And then you move up to the Vorsprung edition, which is just over the £50,000. This particular car here on test is £50,120, £57,000. But let me just caveat that by saying that performance exhaust system, the Akrapovic exhaust system, is £4,125 on its own. So you can knock the money off that, you know, you can knock, you know, £4,000 off the car for a start. And then obviously it's got metallic paint, but that's it as far as options are concerned. It is relatively well equipped to standard, the Vorsprung edition. But yeah, it's chunky money. But I suppose when we think about it, you know, that BMW M135 that I tested, that wasn't a cheap car. That was over £50,000. The Honda Civic Type R, that's over £50,000. You know, Cupra Leon VZ, that's chunky money. So Audi are only really doing what everyone else is. But yeah, I'd question whether you need to spend £4,000 on an exhaust. I'd maybe just buy the standard car and take it to Miltech or something and see if they can do you a deal. Now, we're going to talk about competition now. And in fairness, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking, actually, is this an expensive car? Because, let's be honest, none of those cars I mentioned were cheap, as I said. You know, you've got competition coming from internally at the Volkswagen Group from the Golf R and Cupra's Leon VZ. So those are the two cars which are going to be probably on your shopping list if you're looking at the Audi, or certainly should be, dare I suggest, on your shopping list if you're looking at the Audi. From BMW, we've got the car we tested the other week, the M135. Good car, I do like it. I do like the BMW M135. I think it's almost a little bit too sensible for its own boots in some respects, because as I say, a hot hatchback should be fun, which means that you're going to look at cars such as that other car we tested, the Honda Civic Type R. That's a fun car, okay? So that's £50,000, as I say. So, you know, Audi's no different to that. What else are we going to look at? Mercedes-Benz, of course, Mercedes-AMG, as I should call it. They've got the A35 and then the A45, which competes with the RS3 model of this. So that's a car maybe also to consider, but it's Mercedes, maybe just a bit too sensible in some respects. But here's the thing, let's think about that price for a second now, okay? You can buy one of these, as I say, in the black edition for, what is it, £47,500, as I say. £45,000 is where the Toyota GR Yaris is, and that's a much smaller car. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a brilliant car, but you know what I mean, a Toyota Yaris at £45,000, that's got the expensive. So is there much difference? I suppose if you're looking for the real fun factor and you're considering the Honda, then maybe you might consider the Yaris, but it's a much smaller car. And as I say, in terms of its value for money, it starts to make this look, well, quite reasonable maybe in some respects. I've found Audis of late that I've been testing to be a little bit hit or miss. Some have really impressed, others less so, and dare I suggest have actually disappointed. But I'm pleased to say that this car falls very firmly into the former camp. This is a really good car and an exceptionally good Audi. But more than that, it's a really good hot hatch. Now, let me explain my reasoning by this. It feels like the S3 really has come out of the shadow of the RS3 and carved itself its own little niche, just like the original did back in 1999. It's still got all the attributes that you want from an Audi A3, but in a really fun package. And that's exactly what that original car did 26 years ago now. I think it's a more fun car to drive than the BMW M135. So from that point of view, I think that the Audi is the better car. Don't get me wrong, if you are after the absolute ultimate in driver's hot hatchbacks, there's no doubt in my mind that the Honda Civic Type R is still the one to have. But from an ownership's point of view, from an owner's point of view, as a car just to get in and live with on a daily basis, that just in some respects will do everything you need just a 5-door family hatchback to do, and yet when the mood takes you, has got enough under the skin to make it come alive, then there's little to suggest that the new Audi S3 couldn't be that car from you. So yes, this is a brilliant hot hatch, a fantastic S3, but more than that, a really good Audi. Thank you for watching another road test review on House of Cars. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, make sure you give it a little thumbs up, and of course, as always, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you have an Audi S3, or did you go down the route of the Golf R or the Mercedes-AMG A35 or BMW M135 instead? Let me know your thoughts. Did you spend the extra and go for an RS3? Did you have one of the original S3s? Did you like that? Anyway, there we go. Let me know your thoughts. Also make sure you're subscribed as well, because I could do with a few more subscribers. And once you've done that, press the bell button that's down below, because that means you'll get notification of when the next video goes live. You won't miss one. Now, if you're into your Instagram, I'm over there on @HouseOfCars1973. So if you want to give me a follow there, I'd certainly appreciate it. And remember, whether or not it is a fast car or a slow car, a small car or a big car, an old car or a new car, you will find them all here in the House of Cars. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.